structure of it is structured around 7 different miracles. All of those that John talks about here over the course of the next 8 weeks. And so the point of John's gospel was so that people would see Jesus for who he was, they would see that he was divine, they would see that he was truly the Son of God, and that they would believe and put their faith in him. And much of John's ministry took place in and around Ephesus. He was at the church at Ephesus for a long time, and so while he was there, so there's 2 different reasons he kind of goes on these miracles, structures around these miracles and these signs. First, there was a large Jewish population that he was ministering to. And so part of his ministry was showing the Jewish people, the Jewish population, that Jesus was the Messiah. He was the promised one, and that he had fulfilled all these signs. And then at the same time, in Ephesus, there was all of these other false gods and false religion that was going on. And so he had all these other new believers also that were coming in with no background. And so at the same time that he's using these same miracles and those same signs to lead a Jewish audience to Christ, he's using those same things to show them that this is the truly one and only Son of God. And this is the person that you need to put your trust in. This is the person that you need to put your faith in, and you need to believe in him. And so this morning we're going to look at the first of those miracles, and it's actually the very first miracle that Jesus ever performs. And so we're going to jump in here with this together and see where it goes. So let somebody just start off for us, and somebody read John chapter 2, verses 1 through 4.
On the 3rd day, a wedding took place in Cana of Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding as well. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother told him, "They don't have any wine." "What has this concern of yours to do with me, woman?" Jesus asked. "My hour has not yet come."
All right. So, Houston, we've got a problem. Okay? Not quite that kind of a problem, but Jesus, we've got a problem. Okay? We've got a problem here at this wedding feast. Couple things I just kind of want us to think about for just a little bit, and there's a lot here that we can get into as well. But what does it just say to you? How does it make you think about Jesus that he is attending a party? What does it say to you about him and his personality that he is attending this wedding party, for a lack of, or reception? I don't care. Call it whatever you want, Southern Baptist. It's a party.
It shows that he's human. I mean, that he relates to people and he wants to be around them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that there is this, it's just a natural thing. I think he enjoyed people. I think he enjoyed being around them. And we don't know exactly what his connection to this bride and groom is, or Mary's connection, other than, obviously, there's a pretty strong connection there. And so Mary's invited, Jesus is invited, and Jesus goes. And they not only, there's also something else that's kind of maybe hidden, that kind of layered in here as well, is it's almost kind of like maybe that Jesus shows up with some unexpected guests as well. Because he's got these other 12 guys that are following him around, right? So kind of makes you think that maybe there's a whole bunch of that that's happening at this party. You know what I mean? But I think his disciples were invited as well. In fact, it says that right there in verse 2, that Jesus and his disciples were invited to this wedding as well. But they had to have been, at the very least, last-minute guests, because they haven't been his disciples for a few days. Okay? Maybe weeks at the very, very most. Okay? And so, a very open group of people that are saying, hey, yeah, go ahead, come on, bring your friends, bring your family, and it'll be fine, and we'll have plenty. Except for what? They don't have plenty. Right? They are going to run out. And
everybody's worst nightmare.
Huh?
That's everybody's worst nightmare that's putting on a party. You run out.
Yeah, and especially a wedding, right? I mean, this is a major embarrassment, right? To the point of, and we might think of it as just as an embarrassing situation, but in their day and in that culture, and you got to remember that, unfortunately, shame is a big part of their culture. It's a big part of Jewish, not only culture, but almost Jewish Judaism. The religion is a shame. It's a shame-based thing. And this is something that's not only going to be talked about for a few days, this is something that would have been talked about for a long time. This is something that would have hung around this family and would have been very, 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 very difficult. Very, very difficult for them. But yeah, it's a horrible thing. Can you imagine? Right? Some of y'all planned weddings, some of you have planned big events, and to run out.
They sure weren't Southern Baptists, I'll just say that right now.
Well, yeah, on a lot of different levels, they're not Southern. They're not Southern Baptists. We'll maybe get into some more of that a little bit later. But it's just interesting to me that a lot of things I say that way too much. It's just a stupid catchphrase that you guys get sick and tired of me saying. It's interesting to me. Well, yeah, of course it's interesting. It's in the Bible, but. It's not where I would expect this first miracle to take place. It's not life or death. It's not, you know what I mean? It seems kind of secondary, right? But this is where the first miracle takes place. What are the thoughts? What are the things you want to talk about here? What are your questions?
What better place to do it when you've got a large gathering?
Okay, but there's a problem with that, right? What's the problem with that, Jeff? I mean, I understand where you're going, but just keep thinking through that. What's the problem with that?
Nobody knows it.
Huh?
Nobody knows it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, nobody's going to know that Jesus did this, except for his mother, his disciples, a couple of servants, maybe the bride and groom are going to know at the end of the day, but nobody's going to know. He's going to kind of do this. He's going to reveal his glory to a very small group with this miracle. Okay? So, why? Why is only a very small group going to know? It's in this passage. It's in this section. Right? Come on, Dustin. You're about to bust. What do you want to say?
I'll answer for him.
Okay.
He's been messing with my coffee, is why he's laughing. But because it wasn't time for him to, it wasn't, the public part wasn't time.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's saying to his mother, he's saying, my hour's not come. He doesn't feel like it's time to announce his public ministry or to begin his public ministry. And so because of that, he's kind of in a tough spot, right? And the tough spot is, it's not really time, but there's this need. And what's the other tough spot about it?
He's honoring his mother.
Mommy said to do it.
Yes, get it done.
Right?
Isn't it weird? What? He's talking to his mom, but hey, woman.
Exactly.
I would not recommend any of you husbands speak to your wives this way, or any of you young people speak to your mothers this way, okay? What concern of yours does this do with me, woman? Yeah, and that's the way we kind of might read it. That's not really the way it ought to be read. It doesn't have any. It wouldn't have been an uncommon way for them to speak during their day and time, and it doesn't mean that because we can almost read it and it comes across rude, right? But it's not rude. It was just a normal, you know what I mean? And actually, one of the things that I read, one of the writers actually said this was a tender expression.
That's how I mean it.
That's how you What does this have to do with me, woman? Yeah, so there you go. Put that in your tool bag and use it if you ever need to in the future. Just in case you ever slip up and use that phrase. Anyway, in somehow or another. But there is something else that's really cool here that the faith of Mary here is amazing. This is the first miracle. This has never been done. He hasn't done anything miraculous that we know of. And I think nothing miraculous, period, other than just being Jesus, the Son of God, for these first 30-some years, right? That her faith that Jesus can do something to meet this need, even though it's not life or death. You know what I mean? But that social embarrassment thing, that shame thing, it's a big, right? And there's obviously a very strong connection between Mary and this family because they've come to her with the problem, right? And then she goes to the source. She takes this concern, she takes this problem, and she takes it to Jesus. And I think there's something I kind of love that about this, right? She's like, he can do something. And it just kind of takes me back to Christmas and thinking about, all the different times that we hear Mary say, or we see of Mary where it says, and she ponders these things in her heart. We've got 30 years of her pondering in her heart the things of her Son, the things of Christ, the things of the Messiah. We've got 30 years of her reading. Can you imagine being Mary? And every Sunday morning you go to synagogue and they're reading Old Testament. They're reading the Old Testament. They're reading the law, and they're reading the prophets, and you're sitting there with your boy, and you're thinking, he's going to do these things. You know what I mean? Just like that song, Mary, Did You Know? She knows. She knows that blind people, I think she knows that he has the power to make the blind see. He has the power to make the deaf hear. Even though he's not done any of that yet, I think she knows. And I think that's a powerful thing that we've got here. That here we've got this problem, we've got this social embarrassment, we've got this concern. It's kind of an everyday part of life kind of problem. It's not life and death, but it's a big problem. And Mary believes that Jesus not only can, but he will do something about it. And so it kind of puts Jesus in a tough spot. And time's not yet come, but Mary wants him to help, right? And so he kind of does this. He does this miracle, but he does it in a quiet way that only a very few are going to know about. But the impact that it's going to have on those very few at the end is big. All the disciples at the end of the day, what's it going to say at the end of our lesson today? At the end of the passage? Because of this miracle, they all believe. Okay? And so anyway, that's just something kind of interesting.
Steve, there's something else in there that speaks to me, and that is we don't have to. It's not just the big things we can bring to the Lord.
That's right.
That it's all things, and if it's something that, it's just a little thing to everybody else, it might be kind of a big thing to you, and God cares about those things, and he can still reveal himself through those little things to each of us. And we, Scripture says we have not not because we ask not, and when we do ask, we ask with the wrong motives.
Yeah.
So if we're seeking His glory, even in those little things.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree completely. All right, let's move on. Somebody read verses 5 through 8.
Do whatever he tells you, his mother told his servants. Now 6 stone water jars have been set there for Jewish purification. Each contained 20 or 30 gallons. Fill the jars with water, Jesus told them. So they filled them to the brim. Then he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the head waiter. And they did.
Okay. My book starts out as Jesus, we have a problem in the first one, and then the next one, the little subtitle is for Jesus, it's not a problem. It's kind of like that.
Okay, this is how my mind works, Steve. I'm doing the math. It says 20 to 30 gallons, 6 jugs. That's 150 gallons of wine.
That's a good party.
It's a good party.
These just go for a couple hours. But I realize these sometimes just didn't go for a couple hours. These were days.
Some of these wedding events would last days. Yes.
150. It's still a lot of wine.
That is a lot. That is a lot of wine. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Come back to that thought also. But before we get to that part, I just love Mary's response to Jesus. You know, he's like, so he does the whole, woman, what's this got to do with me? You know, which not really the way it should come across. But she doesn't argue with him. She doesn't keep doing anything. I just love her response. Do whatever he says and walk. I just kind of have this in my mind. I have this picture that she just turns to all the wait staff that's there and she says, do whatever he says, and just goes back to the party. Right? And so there is, again, this belief that Mary has, this faith that Mary has, that Jesus is just going to, I don't know what he's going to do, but he's going to do something, and all you need to do is obey. Whatever he says, do it. And the thing that he's going to say and ask for doesn't make a lot of sense. Right? So we've got these, how many gallons you say? 150?
150 gallons, and that's not counting what they've already drank.
Okay. So we got 150 gallons worth of water. And this just kind of magnifies the miracle. This is dishwater. This is what this is. This isn't drinking water. This isn't your Culligan Man jugs of water that's ready for people to drink, right? This is water in stone jars for Jewish purification. This is dishwater is about as nice as pointed, but not about the nicest thing as I can say about it. This is the water for washing your feet. Okay? So, probably not the most clean, not the most, we're not worried about cleanliness. We're not drinking this water. We're not cooking with this water. This water is there to wash our hands and our face, wash our feet, and at the end of the night, we're probably going to use it to do the dishes.
And here, as we was reading, it says, then draw some out. So it doesn't say they're taking the whole 30-gallon jugs.
Well, yeah, they're not going to, yeah.
It says, so they filled them to the brim. Then he said to them, now draw some out.
Right.
Take it to the head waiter.
Right. And and I think the reason for that is, we'll get to that. Well, no, let's just tackle it. So, here's the key question in there, then. To me, anyway. Maybe you guys have a different thought. When does the water turn to wine?
On its way to the head waiter.
Marvin says when they poured it in, when they added water to the already somewhat full pure stone jars for purification. I don't know. There's two different things there.
I think it was another act of obedience or to trust what was supposed to be done and not knowing, so they sent it to him, not knowing, and just trusting that it was going to turn to wine.
Yeah, and no matter when it was, whether when they poured the water in or when they drew the water out, and whether it was at that time changed in the stone jar or if it was changed on the way to the head waiter, Trey makes a great point. There's an element of faith that activates this miracle. They had to obey, they had to believe, and they had to do what Jesus said. Right? You see this several times in a lot of different miracles that Jesus performs, right? That he asked for a response. He asked for faith to activate a thing, even though he could have just done it, right? But faith activates things. Faith moves things. Jesus said that if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, get up and be thrown into the sea, and it'll do it. It'll go, right? It activates things. It makes things happen. And so this is a big chance that these servants are taking, right? Because
Can you imagine their thought? They just poured water, took water into a pitcher, and they're walking up to pour it in and tell everybody it's wine. And to them, they just got water.
right.
So to believe that it is wine.
Yeah, because that last little statement, and they did, is big. Even though it was a small thing, that was a big thing. I mean, that just so that application there for us is, a lot of times whenever we read these stories, whenever we read these accounts, we often try to put ourselves in the story, right? Which is good, it's fine. But who should you picture yourself as in the story? Who do you want to be?
Jesus.
Oh well, you can't be him. Take him off take him off. You don't get to pick that one. You don't get to pick that character.
The servants. The servants.
But the servants is who you ought to see yourselves as, right? See, I really just kind of want to be the disciples, though. I just kind of want to be at the party, having a good time, and just taking it all in, and then being at the end of the day, be going, "Whoa,
Yeah.
I believe in him." You know what I mean?
Do you think any of them took a little sip before they took it to
I don't know. Probably not.
No.
Probably not. Like I said, it wasn't the most desirable water to begin with.
Yeah, why would you want to take a drink of it?
Why would you want to take a drink of that, right?
But then you're going to feed it to others.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, really, a good application for us is just that, we ought to be like the servants, and we ought to trust Jesus, and we ought to follow his instructions. And whatever he says do, we need to do. Right? Even if we don't have full comprehension of what's taken place. And I think that's a problem for us. A problem for us a lot of times is we want to do what he wants to do, but we want to know the end. We want to know the end result. We want to know the outcome.
The human factor.
And that's not how God operates. We're called to live by faith. We're called to take one step, and then another step, and then another step, trusting that he's going to get us to that destination where we need to be.
Amen.
And trusting him with the results. But so many times we want to know, okay, if I do this, we want that cause and effect, right? Well, then, you know what I mean? We want to have it all planned out. And that's not how God operates, okay? Just know, if nothing else out of that section, you ought to take the advice that Mary gives the servants. Do whatever he says to do. Not even knowing what he's going to ask. Just believe. Just do it. And so that's what they do. So, any other thoughts, questions, anything else you want to talk about there in that section? All right, let's read verses 9, 10, and 11, somebody.
When the head waiter tasted the water, it had become wine. He did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. He called the groom and told him, everyone sets out the fine wine first, then, after people are drunk, the inferior. But you have kept the fine wine until now. Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Canaan of Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him.
All right. So, I'm just going to throw it open to you guys for questions or thoughts. What are your questions? What are your thoughts?
Did it take the disciples till this point to believe in him? I was like,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he hadn't done much yet.
yeah. I don't know.
You know what I mean? He hasn't done a lot other than he's given a couple little signs, like to Nathaniel whenever he says, I saw you sitting under the tree. You know what I mean? Reading. You know? So he's given them a little bitty glimpses, but really up to this point, they haven't seen much other than just his teaching and that they're willing to follow. You know? And it's pretty quick again, right? This happens pretty early. What else? Any thoughts about the head waiter's comment?
Wanted to know where it came from?
Yeah. Well, yeah, he didn't know where it came from, right? So it kind of gives you the idea that he knew they were out of wine, or they were running out of wine, and suddenly we've got a pretty strong abundance of wine.
And the quality.
Huh?
The quality of the
He
wine.
tasted the
Okay.
wine.
Yeah. Everyone sets out the fine wine first, then after people have drunk, the inferior. But you've kept the fine wine until now. I think there's something interesting. Why do I keep saying that? I think there's something to be learned from that. All of my life as a Southern Baptist, it's been the debate about alcohol, drinking, all those different types of things. And I've even heard this used before in terms regards of, well, the first wine that they served was old wine. It was fermented wine. This wine was some kind of a new wine that probably wasn't fermented and probably didn't have any alcohol content. No. They drank wine, people. Okay? And there is no prohibition in the Old Testament for drinking wine or drinking alcohol. Okay? But it is a sin to be drunk. Drunkenness is a sin. Okay? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's listed. Okay? So, that as a side note. I'm not a wine connoisseur. I don't drink wine. I don't drink. Not that I've never, because I have. And part of the reason that I don't drink is not because I see anything in Scripture that tells me I shouldn't drink, but because of the problem that I've had with it in the past, I just can't go there. Right?
Right.
I am not a person of much self-control. Okay? Whenever I tend to do something, I tend to take it to whatever the limit is, whatever the extreme is, right? And so I don't do that. So I'm not a wine connoisseur, but I know just enough to know there is a difference between good wine and really good wine. And there's bad wine. And guess what? The alcohol content in all of them is the same. It's all the same. You can have a really great bottle of wine, and the alcohol content in that thing is the same as this cheap bottle of wine that tastes like dishwater. Right? I mean, some of you know, some of you, yeah. It never was my thing. I just shut up, Steve. Don't go down. Don't tell them. You don't need to reveal so much about yourself. But there's something about this. Jesus didn't just give them good enough. He gave them the best freaking wine they've ever drank. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said freaking. Right? But that's just my point. He could have just kept whatever he produced in that miracle, it could have just blended in with all the other wine that they've been serving up until that point. But that's not what he gives them. It's not my time. It's not my moment. Woman, this is not my concern. This is not my glory. But when it comes right down to it and it's time to turn dishwater into wine, he makes the best bottle of wine that money can buy.
What would you expect?
And probably the greatest drink they've ever had. And they probably never had wine as good as that again in their life. And this moment of social embarrassment that would have been talked about forever in this family, in this community, becomes, in their life, this moment of forever going forward, them probably saying, man, do you remember that wine we had at that party?
You remember that part?
You remember that party? 150 gallons of the best wine we've ever had. That party went on for a week or more. I don't know how many people came. But there's something in that to me. And there's a picture and there's a sign that, Jesus doesn't just, it kind of goes on to what he's going to talk about later in John chapter 10. I didn't come so that you could just have life. I came so that you could have life abundant. Abundant life is what I want to give you. I don't want to just give you good enough. I don't want to just give you average. I want to give you the very best.
Amen.
And that's what they get. They get the best. And it becomes this scene of embarrassment becomes this thing that is just something really, really incredible. The other thing that I just want to mention in closing, and I'm going to get you guys out of here a little bit early today, but the miracle in this story is unusual because, like I said at the very beginning, it doesn't deal with life and death issue. It's not a major physical malady that needs to be healed. It's not even a spiritual thing. It doesn't even occur in any kind of really religious setting, but it occurs in a social setting. It prevents social embarrassment, and it takes an occasion of joy, and it just adds to it. What was already an occasion for celebration just gets added to. But I think there's also another really important gospel thing happening here. We heard this a couple weeks ago. I don't know, maybe this last Sunday. I can't remember. Maybe I get them all confused. But the Bible starts with a wedding, and it ends with a wedding. And Jesus' first miracle takes place at a wedding. And I think there's something, whenever we go to a wedding, what are we celebrating?
Union.
We're celebrating a union. We're celebrating a new relationship. We're celebrating a new life, right? We're celebrating where, Trey, you had a life. before Katie, right? Katie had a life before Trey. But when they came together, that was a new life. You had a new beginning that day, right? Two people became one person, and a new relationship was born, right? And I think there's a gospel message in that for us. That relationship is important. And relationships are important, and God wants a relationship with us. And we need to have that kind of union with Him as well. But there's this picture here of Jesus that I He's tender, He's compassionate, and as we already talked about, He's concerned about all areas of our life. Right? He doesn't want the bride or the groom or the family or his mom to be humiliated. And so it kind of speaks to His ability to act, you know what I mean, on all of our concerns. And probably another lesson that I probably ought to take from this is, I kind of in this passage, I see Jesus as a person who enjoys other people. He enjoys being with people. And He's not the sourpuss at the party. Right? Because I'm more the person that's like, you know, that sounds like a really good idea to go do that, right? Until it's time to go, and then I'm like, oh, I really don't want to go do that. Right? Can't we just stay home? You know, surely there's a game on, or surely do we have to go? Right? And then you end up going, and what happens?
Have a good time.
Man, I'm glad I went. Man, I'm really glad we went. Why do I fight that so much? Some of us do. Some of you don't. Some of you are extroverts, and you just are like, woohoo, let's go. You know, and I like, you know, it seems like almost every marriage has one of both. You know what I mean? The person that wants to go all the time, and the person that's just like, no, can we just stay home? You know, what type of thing? But, and I don't mean to be sacrilegious or anything like that. But there is an element that Jesus brought life to this party.
Yeah. And He did it without, He was discreet about it.
Yeah.
He didn't want to become the reason the party was a great thing.
Yeah.
He wanted the wedding to be the reason for the celebration.
Yeah. And, yeah.
You have to say, which one of those servants didn't believe in Jesus?
Yeah, you know, I don't know, and I don't mean to promote this or anything, but if you haven't watched The Chosen, I love this episode on The Chosen. I love kind of what they do with the artistic license, if you will, on that with this, because a couple of the servants are, especially women, are been followers of Jesus. You know what I mean? And we know that in addition to the 12 disciples, that there were some ladies that were very, very faithful to that ministry and to Jesus. And so there's a couple of them in that show, and at least, you know, that they believe and they start, you know what I mean, following Jesus as well. But so He does this all, and He keeps it all in balance, right? He provides for the need, He does all this, but He still does it in a quiet way where He's not like, okay, I'm not really publicly declaring my ministry, you know what I mean, out here. But the disciples see something. Those servants see something. And what they see is that He is divine. What He does, what He provides, He's faithful. Even now, you see this picture of, it's not my time, but I'm going to do this thing. He's faithful to His own divine mission. He acts with divine power. And at the same time, he elicits faith from people. He elicits belief from people, which is those that witnessed it, those that acted in faith, those that believed in faith, saw his divine glory, and his glory is revealed in this. And verse 11, this is the beginning of the signs that Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. And so,
See, what would have happened if, these servants that filled these jugs with water, knowing what kind of water it was, would have been like, we're not taking this up to the guy to drink. And how often is our response that way?
yeah. What would they have missed out on? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I see another
What would we
aspect.
miss out on?
What's that?
Just obedience keeps coming to my brain. Mama said, he did, and then Mama said to the servants, and they did. It's a cycle of obedience, and I think it just grows from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so,
Are you
yeah,
guys
and
seeing
so, I mean, the servants did get that too. They did get that command from Mary, even before Jesus gave them a command, whatever he says, you do, right? But I think also that kind of points to how much of a crisis this was. You know what I mean? Ever been those situations where you're like, I don't care, we got to do something, right? Whether it's right or wrong, we got to do something. And at least somebody had an option. But at the same time, I think whenever Jesus gives them this, I don't know, just me. I think when Jesus is speaking and says, do this, I think they're like, yes, sir.
I just think their obedience had to be at another level at that time, because you move forward and people say, oh, this is the guy that heals people and walks on water and all this. Well, he had not done any of that.
None of that had happened.
So this was like blind faith almost.
Yeah.
But then they were also servants, and they knew their place
Yeah.
to do what you're told.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's
But at
what
the-
what
yeah.
other options do you have?
But when you don't have any other options, you know what I mean? But still, I just kind of have it in my mind that even as Jesus is speaking, I think that there's some divine glory being displayed. Because it says in this his glory was revealed and they believed. I think even as Jesus spoke, you guys have had those moments. We've all had times where we're not sure what we're supposed to do. We're not sure what way God is speaking to us or what way God is leading us, right? Mm-hmm. But I think you've all also had times where you knew. You knew that God, that Jesus, the Holy Spirit, everyone spoke to you and you knew exactly that you were supposed to do this thing, right? And I think this is one of those moments where it's like, his glory is actually being revealed a little bit here. Even in this, in my mind, I kind of go along with the chosen. This is not outside. This is inside. This is in the house. There's nobody else around. And I kind of think that there's a little bit of glory seeping through. There's a little bit of divine in the room. And they're like, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen, but we believe that something amazing is going to happen. And they act in faith and obedience, and God comes through.
Like an aura that they see.
Maybe. I think there may be something, but I just think that, you know what I mean? You know when God speaks to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit what's going on here. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and let you get out of here, and have a great morning. Next week, we're going to be looking at the sign of His grace in John chapter 4, so go ahead and read through the next couple chapters, and we'll be ready. We'll be ready for that.